Hey there guys, Nervous Trading Cards, and today going to be going over my PBD deck profile for overdress. So far, this deck is not doing so hot as far as like it really being good, but I'm sure anyone who's watching this video knows that, but I have tried my absolute best to make the deck, to me personally, the most flexible and best to its current potential as of DBT02. Of course, depending what we get in DBT03, this could really shake up this deck, even if it's not direct support for this, just depending on what generic character support we get, could really change up this deck, to the point where it's completely different or just kind of similar, but, better, which I'm hoping that we get, at least a bit of support similar to the one dragon that we already had that, let's see, where is it? I have this boy here. If we get any more support that's like, when retired stuff that doesn't have to be directly an encounter card, that would be perfectly fine. But with that being said, let's get into the actual deck profile. So starting it off, got the typical ride line here, your typical PBD ride line that you've been playing since, what was it, like Advance of, gosh, I'm trying to remember what DBT04 was called in the original series. I knew it was something Darkness. I actually can't remember, surprisingly, what it was called. But moving on to the actual main deck, got 3 copies of PBD. This is the only grade 3 I'm playing. Now, I know most people will end up playing Fasado, which is still a good card solely for resist, but I just ended up having what I believe to have better options and better utility for the deck that actually does more, because besides having resist, this card doesn't really do much for the deck. Yes, this deck needs resources, but since this deck can't actually power this card up really at all, it's becomes super easy to block. You can't multi-attack with it like you can in Bastion to try and make it on-hit kind of threatening. And so since it has no power and no multi-attack potential, the on-hit actually doesn't really have any pressure, which is the main use this deck actually needs it for. So it actually just becomes a resist body, which is fine. If you're fine with that, that's completely cool. But for me, it was just kept being more of a break than anything. So I ended up throwing some other cards that I'll talk about later that I think, just made the deck function so much better. Then the other grade 3 I was trying to play is this kind of RNG card that whenever you would dry check it, you can call it to an open rear guard and it gets boost. That's really good, especially since the back row in this deck is usually empty for the most part, which actually is one of the good things about fighting against Leonard. But this actually a pretty bad thing about Leonard is that usually if I do have the back row, it's only one column, so Leonard can only go off crazy the one time, and I usually make it a rear guard column to play smart, so he's not hitting my Vanguard and a rear guard at the same time. But this then will typically open up another column if I am fighting Leonard, and unfortunately, there's a lot of Bruces that I play against, so yeah, this card, as much as I like it, I sadly had to kick out. And there's no really other good generic grade 3 options available right now, so that's just sadly what it's going to be, and that's why I'm stuck to just 3 PBD as my only grade 3. Now moving on into the grade 2s, playing 4 copies of Maka, because if anything, even if you don't use its skill to Superior Call, it still just gets plus 5k when you play it. It's a beater. This deck desperately needs beaters. It needs to be able to hit because this deck's just lacking so much. Speaking of that line, I am still playing the other 3 Blaster Dark solely for the fact of 15k beater, and there is sometimes on the rare occasion where I will use his on-play skill to kill something that's really threatening, especially if I can't do a sack 3 for PBD. This is just something that's just a nice, cheap, easy retire, even though I rarely use that skill. It's mostly for a beater, and unfortunately nothing really else. But of course, Maka here is a nice little engine that gets stuff going and gets us places. And then, moving on to other engine card, I am playing 2 copies here of, I forget this card's name every time, Capald? So whenever it's played, if you don't know what this card does, whenever it's played, you can counterblast 1, rest another rear guard. Look at the top card. If it's a grade 3 or order, add to hand. If it's a grade 2 or less, call it. Perfectly fine. This card gets, it's a plus, if anything. Or if you do see PBD from your main deck, it then secures you a Persona ride for CB1, which is perfectly fine. But rounding out the grade 2s, I am playing 3 Pentagleam Sorcerers. This is actually what I kicked Fasado out for. The fact that I can actually have an extra card that can stack the deck a bit, and then I can just sack this off for literally any of my abilities, or after I get its on place use, and or if I get it off of this, I can, still get that look. Or if maybe I can play this look and then call this out to decide if I want to do it. Calling it, this card just opened up so many extra options, a little bit of breathing room. So I ended up playing this over Fasado, and if need be, it is still 5k shield, unlike Fasado. And yep, that's pretty much the card that ended up taking Fasado's spot, if I haven't been clear enough. Then moving on to grade 1s, I am playing 4 PGs, of course. Now, this would be the booster PG. I'm just too lazy to take it out of my Bastion deck. I only have the one set. I need to get a second set for the sake of it, but I only have one, so yeah, just too lazy. Then a playset of I am being so bad with names. Brunner, the main descendant. This card's just good. It's the only thing that makes the deck function, and all the fact it's a retire too. It's the only thing that makes this deck actually, somewhat feasible with its resourcing. So you play 4 of it. I mean, there's sadly nothing else to say about that at the moment. Then, of course, playing 4 copies of... Sorry about that cut. Camera ended up dying there for a moment. But anyways, back to what we were doing. Playing 4 copies of Karen, because even if you don't get, the card you want to call at the top, you actually don't have to call that card as it's a you main. So it's just, if anything, another scry card, and you can sack it, of course, for any of your skills. This card's just good. It's just more plusing. No reason not to play it. Then, finishing up grade 1, 3 Javelin, just because... Ketter's grade 1s are trash, and this is a 10k body, no matter where it is, boosting or attacking, so unfortunately, that's just where we go. Now, of course, there is the grade 3 dragon, like I showed off earlier. I'm pretty sure I did. That's, if I didn't, yeah, whatever, yeah. I'll end up finding it later. Yeah, the grade 3 dragon that ends up when you sack it, you can Counter Blast and Soul Blast 1 to give all your blaster units plus 5k. Unfortunately, especially with Soul, this deck really doesn't have the resources for that. So we are unfortunately in the situation that we're in with, resources. It's just the main reason that card got kicked out. But finishing it up, of course, talking about triggers, just 4 front, 4 heal, 4 crit, and then 3 draws and an over trigger, because this is what I like to, since we used to call this rainbow triggers, but then we got the over trigger added, so I guess now it's over rainbow triggers, or rainbow over. I don't know what would be the best way to say it, but this is pretty stock. I was actually playing crits or fronts in here, originally in these draw spots, but then I realized hitting draws are good, and Blackish Shield doesn't really matter, because that just means that this is something I can easily call down with no issue and sack. So playing the 3 draws has been very helpful, especially since I'm playing at 3 means that they won't clog up my hand too much as far as defense is concerned. And they're just the first thing I can just chunk down for sacking without having to worry about anything, which has been rather helpful, especially if for some reason I need to call something off of Maka, and it's there, and it's only triggers I can call. I'm much rather call the draw trigger rather than anything else. So, yeah, that being said, that is, of course, the deck profile. Thank you guys for watching. Keep playing the games you want to play, and as always, have fun.